Good afternoon, and welcome to Reason with Rattigan on www.reggaeglobalradio.com. As usual, we have a great program lined up for you today, and we anticipate that you will join and reason with us on the phone. By the way, the number is 667-369-8569. Again, the number is 667-369-8569. You can also reach us in the chat room or via email, and the email is rattiganwill@gmail.com. That's RATTIGANWIL at gmail.com. As I mentioned, the program is going to be very informative as we will hear from and discuss with Professor Rosalia Hamilton the activities of the Trailblazing and Dynamic Advocates Network. Yes, indeed. They have been doing outstanding work in highlighting and seeking resolution to issues of great importance to Jamaicans. We will also hear from Ambassador Curtis Ward, and he's going to stitch together the diplomatic activities that seemingly led to Jamaica's receipt of a gift from Morocco in the form of 2.6 million pounds of high grade fertilizer. And we will try to track and trace the whereabouts of the fertilizer. So, if you have any friends, family, associates who are farmers, tell them to tune in now. If you have enemies who are farmers, forget the differences. No, call them and tell them to tune in. Oh, by the way, the flyer that went out today, there was a typo on it regarding the spelling of Moroccan. I don't want to feel something I can't spell because when we go Balmaji, I was the runner-up for the spelling bee champion for Balmaji Primary School. And anybody who go Balmaji with me during them time, them can vouch for me. Anyway, we will also discuss the observers list of the worst and best performing ministers. Interestingly, this list concurs with my position that Ministers Johnson Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Dr. Chang, who's the Minister of National Security, Christopher Tufton, who was the Minister of Health and Wellness, and Dr. Fable Williams, the Minister of Education. They are, and this has been my position for a long time now, those of you who've been following me, you know that's true. They're among the worst that has ever happened. They're the worst that have ever been appointed to head those ministries, and they should be put out to pasture. We will also discuss an incident involving the Jamaica Olympic Committee and its failure to provide a bronze medal to our third place finisher in the women's 200 meters at the 2000 Olympic Games in Australia. And finally, we have one of our illustrious in-house attorneys, Miss Shernette Noyes from Noyes and Associates. She'll make a whole heap of noise. She's based in Connecticut. She will be providing valuable information concerning the requirements to get a green card if you're the abused spouse of a U.S. citizen, regardless of whether you live in or outside the U.S. So now for tune in for that too. Shout out time. Prayers and blessings for Ma P and family, Ma Jean and family, the Nelsons, her big up yourself, Sadie Mack and family, Michael Billy Boy Anderson. And by the way, people, Michael Billy Boy Anderson, last time I saw him was 1977. We used to live in the CM tenement yard at 6 Penwood Crescent. Again, Billy Boy, big up yourself. Patrick and Beth, Mr. Guntley, and of course, Joanna Marie and Ed. Big shout out to the Reggae Global family, Kevin the Maestro, and the rest of the family, doing great work. Diane from Jersey, Straw, my cousin, and his family. Liz from Canada and from Six Penwood Crescent and her family. The Rallington crew, Admiral, big up yourself, Donovan. The Firehouse crew, and the St. Bess family. We'll turn to updates now. I am patiently waiting on responses from the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries and the Ministry of Finance regarding my inquiries under the Access to Information Act of 2002. And I will continue to wait until such time. The interesting thing about my wait is that, according to the law, the ministry must inform you within 30 days of receipt of the application whether or not the information will be granted or refused or deferred or the period extended and inform you of their reasons for this and your rights of appeal. So in layman's terms, once you file it, they have 30 days within from the time you file it to get back to you to acknowledge receipt and to give you a response. Or if they're not going to respond directly to your request, then they have to tell you that they're not going to, and they have the right to extend it for 30 days. Now, I filed my request with the Minister of Finance regarding Minister Johnson Smith's, the debacle concerning her failed bid to become the Secretary General of the Commonwealth. I filed that November 24th. So the 30-day period gone. No response from them. Minister of Agriculture regarding the fertilizer. I filed that December 3rd. No response. Well, pretty soon we're going to find out which God them serve. Because I'm going to show them some I not only talk, but me take action. Believe in them, my people. All right? So we'll wait and we'll see what happens. I won't tell them what I'm going to do, but we just want them to know that the 30-day period passed, and so far we have not received a response. By the way, so I'm dressed up today. It's a big contrast from the picture behind me, right? It has shown where me I come from to the station I presently occupy in life. That show said that you can do it with opportunities and with ambition. And so I will continue to have this thing here because it's a reminder of my past. And it's also a reminder of who I am. So even though it's in the past, it's still present. And so that's why we keep fighting for those people. One piece of news regarding the PM's visit. The Observer put out an article last week concerning his trip to the U.S. And deservedly so, it's still getting a lot of attention. And I have publicly stated in the past that the government would do well to liaise with the diaspora before setting up specific meetings with certain foreign governments, as it is abundantly clear that the foreign ministry and a certain ambassador, and I don't know who me attack, they are severely challenged in this regard. Next time, I hope they will heed my advice. So, having said that, folks, let me just bring on this distinguished panel I have here. First of all, we have Miss Rosalia Hamilton. Words cannot describe her achievement. She would, at least not my words. I'd rather have her do it because I wouldn't do justice to this fine young lady, this bastion of our society, this champion of our people. We're also joined by, of course, the one and only Fireman, man from Straight Up News Talk, 93 FM, out of Kingston, Jamaica, or appropriately St. Andrew, Jamaica, campus of the University of the West Indies. And then finally we see Mr. Jeffrey Tavares, host of Make We Talk. There he is. Yes. So, folks, I'll just do a quick introduction and I'll allow the discussion to just run its course. Miss Rosalia Hamilton, as I said to you before, she's a bastion of our society. She's a pillar of our society. This woman, she's all over the place. She's busy doing things like you wouldn't believe. I was so fortunate that she allowed me a few, I want to say minutes, but it's actually hours of her time. Me chat and keep her up the whole time. But she is the face, or one of the faces, or the principal face of Advocates Network. And she's involved with a whole lot of projects. And so without further ado, what I'd like to do is ask everyone to give a warm welcome to Miss Rosalie Hamilton. Ma'am, the stage is yours. Please, let me start by asking you, who is Rosalia Hamilton?
Unmute your mic.
Unmute your mic. Unmute your mic.
Okay, sorry. It was really a pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much for having me. And, I enjoyed our hours of conversation. You know, I describe myself quite frankly as a Jamaican woman who is doing all I can to improve the country I love. That's at essence who I am. And, you know, everything is about, you know, all that I've done is about trying to, you know, build my own capacity to do more to help. I did an undergraduate degree in England, looking at social sciences generally, psychology in particular, then went into international affairs and then economics at the PhD level. And then I did law. So all of that was to come back home and to try to make a difference in our society. Of course, there are many challenges, but I also, when we talk about these challenges, also want to remind Jamaicans about the opportunities and the good things that are happening to Jamaica. You know, we still have freedom of speech. Many societies today don't have that. And, you know, citizens are constrained to speak and to act. And so one of the reasons we do what we do in the Advocates Network is we want to encourage Jamaicans. Don't be so afraid, you know, embrace the democratic assets that we have, our capacity to speak freely and to push to create a different society. So that's in a nutshell who I am.
Okay. Thank you for that introduction. Now, let me ask you about Advocates Network. My understanding is that this network came about as a result of an MP abusing his girlfriend, and so you got involved. Tell us what is the. Can you give us the history of because it's a recent history of Advocates Network?
Yes, it was in April 2015 when, you know, Jamaica saw that tape and the allegations were out there that this was a member of parliament. And so the question that we all had then and still today is, was it him? And, you know, it's an amazing set of events that since 2021, we have a member of parliament who's not prepared to say to the Jamaican public, no, it was me, or yes, take responsibility for his action. So we don't know. We continue to advocate for the fact that that's not good enough. That's not the standard of accountability and performance and integrity that we expect from our members of parliament. At minimum, you need to be able to say it was me. And if you can't say that, then it's reasonable for society to think that you were culpable, you know, and it was you who was on that tape. So we think it's unacceptable and that we continue to advocate. So what happened in 2021 is that many of us who have been, you know, doing work in the space of gender-based violence and understand its devastating impact not only on women or men who have been, you know, victims of domestic violence, but the family, children that have been devastated as a result. And many of us came together and thought this is unacceptable. And it mushroomed from there to not just gender-based violence, but human rights generally. And then we felt that there is an important intersection between human rights and governance issues. In fact, the issue surrounding George Wright is a good example that we had an incident of gender-based violence that was associated with him to these allegations and the video that we saw. And importantly, he is a member of parliament and he is held by our society as one of our leaders who we expect to provide good governance for the society. And so we felt that as an organization, as we evolved as a group, as a network, we would embrace both issues, human rights and governance. And so that's our focus. And we think that these issues are important if we want to transform our country. And we encourage Jamaicans to be part of that advocacy network. And it's a loose, unincorporated network of individuals and organizations collaborating to improve good governance and human rights in Jamaica.
No, I've looked at your press releases, and they're quite interesting. I mean, you're taking it to the government, or as they say, we nah ease up, right? That's the motto I think of the
When I ease up.
yeah, man, yeah. Good, good, good. I just looked at the most recent one, and it's very telling because it talks about all the things that you've done over the past year or so, and there's a chart attached to all of the unresolved issues. Um, let me ask you this: considering the list that's here, which one would you consider to be the most significant issue that you've engaged the government with or on?
Well, for me, the advocacy around moving Jamaica to a republic, in my mind, stands on top of everything else. Because we can drill down in terms of what that means, but let's just for now describe it as improving Jamaica, given our legacy, given where we're coming from, transforming the society to become the Jamaica we want to be, to finish the unfinished business of freedom, self-determination, and the idea that we ultimately can run a country that's in our interests, for the people, by the people, of the people. Now, that's very opaque, that's a big concept, but let's just call it the IG Jamaica if you want, because the names Republic tend to confuse people. So there are important core governance, constitutional issues that and legal issues that we can define. But at the heart, we're talking about a Jamaica that addresses the inherited problems that we've had from the pre-independence era. And so issues of crime can get resolved. All the issues that you see in that list, issues of course, governance rights at the top, because it's the governance arrangement, and it's the way we make decisions. It's the systems we put in place to address a lot of the problems that we see today. And when you look at that list, it includes some direct legacies from the past, like issues of land rights, issues having to do with the fact that Jamaicans have no legal access to the beach and to the sea and rivers and so on. And that's embedded in pre-independence law. The Beach Control Act of 1956 was prior to independence. We need to upgrade those things. So when you look at the education system, continues to perpetuate these old colonial norms, like how we wear our hair. Back then, our natural hair was a problem. Today, we don't have an education system in which we can freely wear our hair naturally. These rules persist that guide the very hair that we wear. So it's these kinds of issues, I think, we have to tackle them in creating a republic. And the anxiety we have and the concern we have is that we have set up a Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs. The minister tells us that we're going to do constitutional reform. We're very happy for that, because we do need a constitution that is written by the Jamaican people. And so to date, we've heard nothing about the Constitutional Reform Committee that's supposed to be set up. We don't know the timelines, we don't know deliverables, we don't know terms of reference, nothing. We talk about, and she recognizes the importance of a public education program. In fact, she was part of the Advocates Network first online forum to bring awareness to Jamaicans about this issue. And she agreed that we need a comprehensive public education program. We've heard nothing. This is nearly a year. This is unacceptable.
Okay.
And I could go on, but I think the point for me is that if we focus on getting a republic right, we have a framework, we have a legal constitutional framework in which we can address the problems facing our nation.
So that's the overarching. Yeah, overarching.
Yeah.
Thing. Okay. I've one question to ask and just one statement. Did you go to Excelsior? Did you attend Excelsior?
No, I didn't. But
Okay.
I work with Excelsior.
No, because somebody put a question in the chat about saying that they went to school with Rosalie Hamilton and they're wondering if it's you. But it's not you.
No.
All right. The second
No.
thing is regarding freedom of speech. In the chat room, someone said, I'm not so sure we have freedom of speech because a gentleman was pulled from under his bed and arrested for simply making a statement about the prime minister. So
it's relative. In 2015 we led the hemisphere with respect to international measures of free speech. And so when Jamaica compares itself to the rest of the world, we do very well. We rank in the top 5 in the hemisphere and certainly in the top 5 in the world. And today our ranking is about 3 or 4 or 5. Now, that's very important. It's very important because, that may have happened. I don't know the particular circumstances that the listener is referring to. But let me say this. In countries we know in the world today, if this kind of conversation takes place, all of us would be in front of a firing squad by tomorrow.
yeah.
That's the world we live in. And so I think I speak about this because Jamaicans must understand that we have a democratic treasure that we have to hold on and protect. And that's why this constitutional discussion is important, because we don't want any constraints and fetter to our right to speak and to criticize our government, whoever is in power, to ensure that we create the country we want.
Well, let me say this. I see a fireman chomping at the bit. So I'll just yield the floor to him so he can go ahead and ask you his question or questions. Fireman, the floor is yours. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, good afternoon. Well, I was just listening attentively. That's what I do. I'm a good listener. So, hi, Rosalie. How are you doing?
Not too bad. How are you?
I am fine, thanks. And my friend Jeffrey, how are you, man? And also, of course, our brother Wilford.
The rebel.
The rebel, of course. Well, you know, Prof. Hamilton, they called me the fireman. And indeed, it's for a particular reason because, being a part of the Fourth Estate, it's very important that we critique ourselves at times because indeed, we found wanted in so many spheres because for some reason or the other, we feel restrained or just because of a particular bias, maybe political or otherwise. We are afraid to really hit the target right in the bullseye. And, we must get accustomed.
Fireman, we're getting enough feedback. Sorry to interrupt you. We're getting enough feedback from you. Is something wrong with your mic?
Me?
Yeah. Yeah. But go ahead. Finish your question.
You getting the feedback?
I think we're getting the feedback, Mr. Rattigan. I think what we need to do, the guests need to mute their mic, maybe allow him to speak.
Yes. All right.
Yes. Okay, good. All right. So, indeed, we need to get to the accustomed to this thing called government. I think too many of us conflate the issue with a party scenario. Therefore, when one make the criticism, and I want to just pause to congratulate you, Professor Hamilton, in basically making this move in launching this advocacy group, because indeed, we need this if there wasn't a time in Jamaica that we need this. Certainly, we need it now. So the point is, a lot of people, for example, who support the Jamaica Labour Party, when you talk about government, because they're in the government now, when you talk about government, it is conflated that you're talking about the Jamaica Labour Party. We're talking about a structure called government that certainly under the Westminster style of government, the winner takes all in Jamaica. And that's a very pivotal role. So the opposition at the material time really and truly has very little or no say on how the money is spent. And indeed, we have to hold government accountable as it relates to the fiduciary responsibility. You made a point earlier, Dr. Hamilton, Professor Hamilton, as it relates to how the advocacy group came about, you know, and you're zeroing on the member out of Central Westmoreland, Mr. George Wright. And indeed, it continued to linger. May I ask you, as the founding president or chair of the advocacy network, will you can correct that when you unmute your mic? Is it a done deal as it relates to whether or not you'll be upping the ante to ensure that Mr. Wright does not offer himself certainly and one of the major political party in Jamaica? How would the advocacy network continue that advocacy? Also, we heard from, oh my goodness, his name just eluded me just now, it's a shame, but former fellow and former executive at Grace Kennedy, he died recently. He said that the government of Jamaica and the police, they should employ, and when I say employ, meaning the service, getting the service of our international partners overseas, because if we don't have it in Jamaica, they have the necessary technology that they could illuminate every blade, to use his word, every blade of grass on that tape. The advocacy network, are you mindful to go into that direction? There's also something here that I'm looking at as we speak, where this article was published. I remember I ventilated it in a very big way. It was an article published on the 3rd of September from Loop News, where it says opposition livid over farmland being used for housing development. And a lot of calls were made for certain action to be taken by the Prime Minister by way of information, how that is going. Is this something, and you mentioned as something to do with law, with land for our people. Is the advocacy network mindful of continue raising this issue as it relates to the land in Bernard Lad for the specific use of that land and what exactly is happening there? Those are my opening salvo.
Unmute your mic. Dr. Hamilton.
What they call you again? Fireman?
My name is Conrad O'Brien, but they call me the fireman.
See you throwing some fire there, man. Good questions. And first of all, you know, call me Rosalie. You know, this is a nice chat.
No problem.
So listen, we all came together, you know, none of us taking any leadership charge, so to speak. We all have roles, and we decided we'll take on specific responsibilities in pulling this thing together. We're having internal discussions now in terms of our strategic direction, because where we started, where we are now is two different places. A lot has happened since April 2021. And so the specific issues that you raised are excellent points. And where we go in terms of specific strategic direction is going to be decided by the group. I can say, however, that we will be guided by our motto. We not ease up And so, and so the matter of George Wright is on the table, and the specific details will be worked through. Let me tell you, we've in the press release, we've pointed to three things. We've said this matter of a code of conduct is on the table. The Integrity Commission has put in fact its own code for parliamentarians. We're saying, listen, every parliamentarian need to sign that. And this is something all of us from Jamaica, all Jamaicans at home and abroad, ought to demand that your MP sign that code of conduct. Let me remind Jamaicans, it's our taxpayers paying millions every year for an integrity commission to function. They have under the Act the authority to put those rules and codes of conduct in place. They have done so. Now we must do our part. We must say to the people we put in power, you are our representatives. That's what we want you to do. Sign that code of conduct. So that's one. There is a 2021 impeachment bill, right? Now, again, Jamaicans must be reminded that Andrew Holness himself, when he came to power in 2016, I think it was, told us within the first 100 days he was going to enact and put in law this impeachment bill. And so this matter of holding our elected representatives accountable for the things they say is important. And of course, there is an outstanding hearing, right? The disciplinary committee ought to be held to have a hearing on George Wright. So that's George Wright. So we've flagged some areas. You raised an important issue about whether he is fit for purpose, fit to represent the people in his constituency. Ultimately, it's for them to decide. And so we will do, and some of us who are part of that constituency, we have a very big network, will play their role and make sure that the people in his constituency know who they are to represent. And let me say, that conversation is about all of us knowing who we are going to vote for. I say this about to Jamaicans as we engage these conversations. If you think about, if we see ourselves as owning the country, let's start right there. Who owns Jamaica? If we see ourselves as owners of Jamaica, just like those of us who own a business, you don't hire anybody to run your business. First, you have a terms of reference. You look at their qualification and whether them can run it, whether they have the capacity to run the business. And when you hire them, you monitor them. You don't allow them to just do what they want in the business. You hold regular meetings, regular conversations, and importantly, if they can't do the job, you fire them. Now, I think that's how we have to see our representatives. We hire them to do a job. And so the conversations about George Wright is applicable to all our representatives. Is he or she fit for purpose? Are they the type of person you want to represent you, to run this country that we all love? You raise issues about land. There's an important historical conversation we have to have about land. And let me say this, it's not simply about taking away land from people. We've seen how that have played out across the world. It's about equity and justice. It's about putting policies in place that can give people access to land for housing, dealing with the squatting problem. It is unacceptable that 20% of the population of Jamaica, we're talking over 500,000 people, right? Who are squatting. Unacceptable. We need policies that can address this. And of course, that's tied up with the fact that in the context of climate change and all the challenges we have with food security and so on, we are taking good agricultural land and turning them into real estate jungles. Now, let me rephrase, I'm not negatively casting anything on real estate. I use the term jungle very loosely. I come from a real estate family, so I have a healthy respect for real estate development. And so I also want to make the point that all real estate development is not the same. And we must be thinking about and talking about green real estate development, where there's greenery and respect for the environment, etc. So yes, all of that has to be part of an important land policy that Jamaica needs to come to grips with. So all of the issues are there, they're on the table. We will have internal conversations, and we invite Jamaicans to join us as we contemplate and think through this thing. Let me make one last point. Jamaicans, like we said, we love to follow back up people. We always jump on the train type of thing when it's going. It's not good enough for you to say you in civil society. And by the way, we are part of civil society, and everybody who is not government is part of civil society, right? It's not good enough for people to say, oh no, in civil society need to do more, right? There's only so much we can do, right? And that all of us have to see how, we can play a role in taking on these many battles. That list was shortened to 10, just to make it readable. But it's easily 20 issues that we have engaged in over the period, right? And let alone many others that we've not touched. You just have to go to the Auditor General's report and you see the issues. There's so much. So Jamaicans listening to this must say, hey, that was our appeal. This new year in your resolution, add advocacy and civic engagement. Pick up one little issue that you're upset about. It may be taking place in your parish. It may be taking place in your school, right? And fight it. Stand up for human rights and justice. And I think that will help to make Jamaica a better place. Happy birthday, Rupert.
Happy birthday. And he's in good company, Capricorn. Monday will be mine.
Happy birthday when he comes.
Yes. Good afternoon, Miss Rosalie Hamilton. How are you doing?
How are you?
I am good. You touched on the topic of George Wright. You believe that if this was any other modern democracy, George Wright would be in Parliament sitting down same way?
Absolutely not. And of course, it depends, because you see what's happening in our biggest neighbor, the democracy, that leads the world. They're also, depending on who is running the society, they may well be, because the democratic issues are changing in fundamental ways, even in countries like the US, in Britain, and across the world. So yeah, depending on the country.
And that is why we need constitutional reform. A constitution of the people, for the people, and by the people. And a constitution of the Vumvava and the Vumvavi. A constitution of the people who live below crossroad. Because this thing of parliament and parliamentarians believe that they're above the law of the land cannot continue in Jamaica. And the time has come for us in this country to call a spade and say enough is enough. George Wright should not be sitting in the House of Parliament. And that is why we as Jamaicans need to call for constitutional reform. We have a Minister of Constitutional Reform, or office, or whatever they want to call it. And quite frankly, I don't think she's doing anything. So the time has come for us, with your group, Ms. Hamilton, to call out and say, listen, we need a constitution that can help the Jamaican people. And no parliamentarians, and the investigation arm of the JCF. I'm trying to figure out something here. You think that this person, you can hardly see the video. Yes, the woman don't want to talk is who. But investigative journalism, we don't find out says him, yes or no. But we sit down in this country because well, we are PNP or we are JLP, and we don't want to do certain things. So that is saying to us now that George Wright can do what he feels like to do and get away with it. So other men are going to do the same thing. The young men who are growing up in our society is going to do the same thing over and over again. And so I can get away with it. What is your plan for that, Miss Hamilton? What does your group plan to do? Do we? I mean, go ahead.
Well, as I said earlier, we are planning, we are discussing, and you'll hear on these specific things as we roll them out. But you've raised a good point, and Conrad has raised as well, which is the technology exists. And so, you know, to the extent that we can use that and find a way to get this thing properly examined, that certainly is an option. And so, you know, if there are people listening who feel they want to join us on that effort, please do. Because, you know, we want to explore every option that we can to address this matter. But, you know, let me also say, though, that we will continue to have these George Wright type incidents if we don't get to some of these core issues. And yes, it's embodied in the constitutional issues. And very specifically, I want to suggest that we have to look again at our Section 69 that puts so much power in the hands of cabinet, and the oversight that is implied in its accountability to Parliament is being underemphasized and in fact, non-existent in some instance. So that we have this dominance, again, part of our inherited legal framework, first past the post. So we have a Parliament that's dominated by executive decisions. And what is interesting, I find, is that when the government of the day becomes opposition and they understand the constraint that they had, right, as opposition, not being able to influence and so on, nothing is done. So it's as if we have a set of people that we're moving around who are in these positions who enjoy executive dominance. And I think it's okay. In fact, you hear repeatedly, oh, the Jamaican people vote us in to make decisions. And, you know, whether we consult with you or not is neither here or there. Our job is to make the decisions. And so that easily gets translated into dictation, you know, so these are dictates. So the minister says, and it has to be done. And very little conversation is how do we ensure that the decisions we are charged to make is consistent with the will of the Jamaican people. Recognizing always that you're there on behalf of the people. You're there to do the people's work. And as difficult as it is at times to understand precisely what the will is on any specific issue, we now have technologies to help us. Lots of technologies that exist to help us. And by the way, social media is doing a great job. And I want to use two examples from the two political parties to remind Jamaicans the impact that you can have when you begin to stand up, right? 2014, I think it was, Peter Phillips put the bank fees on the table, right? Social media went wild. You know, no way, you're not going to raise our bank fees, remember that? And he backed off. Recently, last year, we are not going to have a festival song, and Jamaicans at home and abroad made their voices heard. So social media is a very powerful tool. We need to use it effectively, make our voice heard on these issues. And it is when we can put different legal arrangements in place through constitutional or other laws that can constrain and limit the decisions that are made outside of the kinds of scrutiny and oversight and accountability of our people. And we've seen what happened with respect to our taxpayers' money, $140 million, whether it's the case of the Nutritional Products Limited, right? Where we saw, sorry, right? Where we saw, right, where we saw, all of these are, conflicts of interest, tainted contracts that we've seen. And importantly, what the data reveals, and I want to make this point because, sometimes when we talk about these issues, it sounds like, good governance is just a great theoretical idea. But I want to use this Nutritional Products Limited example to make the point, because that connected party transaction of about $143 million, right? And the inadequate oversight on the part of the board led to the students being fed in our schools across Jamaica, moving from 156,000 students in 2015 to 2016 to 18,000 students. 1/8.
17,000.
Right? Right. No. And the production costs moved from $18 per unit, $18 to $111. Right?
Well,
Now, so these things affect our society. It impacts kids. It creates psychological issues, learning issues, and ultimately the problems we see in the society become evident. Crime, etc.
let me just say this. My technical guru just advised me that my birthday greeting to Dr. Francis didn't go out. So let me just say now that the volume is up. Dr. Francis, big up yourself. Happy birthday. Stay strong. Stay youthful. And we're looking forward to good things, continued good things from yourself. Now,
Before you go, Mr. Rattigan, tell him to have a drink of the drunk row too.
I will tell him that. He's listening. Rosalie, you said that the politicians were saying that they were voted in to lead. Well, there is an anecdote about one particular, a very significant member of parliament, a minister in fact, who said that he was voted in to rule, not lead, to rule. And I can say, I heard the story. It came from Nigel Clark, that in a negotiations with some labor people or whatever, he said that he got up and he was enraged and he said he was elected to rule. I don't know how true it is, but I'm just telling. Some may get it, and some may sell it. And the last thing, because we're coming up close, we're coming up on the top of the hour. The last thing is that you mentioned about things that they said in terms of the Republic, that they promised that they would put legislation to remove the Queen. In today's case, it will be the king as the head of state. But they also, in that 2016 proclamation made by the governor general, right, and echoed by the prime minister, they were also supposed to have fixed election dates, and they were also supposed to have term limits for the prime minister. Now, when the prime minister was asked that question when he was here recently, he said that the manifesto in 2016, the JLP manifesto, called for those things, but the 2020 manifesto didn't include these things. I wanted to ask him, well, why was it important to be in 2016 but not 2020? And if you said you were going to do it in that year, in 2016, 2017, even if you didn't do it then, why didn't you do it in the 3 or 4 years leading up to the 2020 election? So having said that, my question is this: given the contempt that they've expressed for doing the right things or doing the things that they've promised, why should we expect any change?
Yeah,
You're
Unmute your mic, Ms. Hamilton. Unmute your mic.
Sorry. I think it's a fair question, and I think what is perhaps a
Ms. Hamilton, your mic is muted again.
not sure who, I didn't do that. All right. Yeah, so again, the question, I think is a good one. And for me, the issue is really about how we hold our representatives accountable. Because, you know, as you say, mouth good for chat, and you can say anything. But you are put in that position to represent the people who put you there. And when you form government, you're acting on our behalf. Gone are the days where we have rulers, and that's one of the reasons we need to get rid of this idea of a king. Because we can have, if that was the statement made, a minister of government talking about ruling, you know, that we are rulers. You know, those are all kind of colonial notions of, you know, we tell you what to do and we make the law, so to speak, as opposed to we together as a society have created a democracy in which you give us this responsibility temporarily for a period of time, and we can fix it by law if we want to, on behalf of the people. And that must be fixed in the heads of our representatives. They need to understand that they're there because the people put you there. And that the opportunities they have, the resources you have, is not yours, and must be used for the benefit of the people of Jamaica and not for yourself or a small group of people.
All right, we're a few minutes away from the top of the hour on the commercial break. So, Conrad, go ahead and ask a question. And Rosalie, if you don't mind, I'm going to try and keep you over for a few minutes on the other side of the hour, if you don't mind.
Sure.
All right, Conrad, go ahead with the question, please. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted. Conrad.
Unmute
Okay.
me right now.
There you go.
Good. All right. Recently, we saw the government, well, through its head of government in Dutch, offered an apology as it relates to slavery. And indeed, we have seen the most far-reaching apology so far, where he directly said that it was indeed a criminal act carried out against the people. And with that said, as we're on the trust of reparation, do you think, Rosalie, that we should now dovetail this reparation that we're asking for from abroad into our local situation here in Jamaica as it relates to the land reform, since so many of our people who work hard, preparing, did not get anything? We must find a way now, and we must begin with a local reparation as it relates to how we settle our people and land. You can answer positively.
The quick answer is yes, we need to have that kind of conversation. Reparations is reparation. We have to repair a damage.
Jeff, you have something? We have 2 minutes or a minute and a half. You have something you want to ask, Rosalie?
Yes, and I think, Miss Rosalie, that what happened, I think, yes, it is all good and dandy to ask for apology from the king, but I believe the two political parties need to apologize to the people of Jamaica for the atrocity that they have given to us. The burning down of the Eventide home, the Rastafarian face burning at Carroll Gardens, Tivoli Garden atrocity, and we can name so much more. So I believe the government of Jamaica need to apologize to the people of Jamaica. Set an example first before we start asking to apologize from England.
And it's fair to say that Olivia Babsy-Grange did make some apology and attempts at reparations for what happened in Carroll Gardens, and that should be part of the record.
All right, we're going to have to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back.
Say honesty, honesty, and you say honesty.
Yes, family, we're back with Rosalie Hamilton, Conrad the Fireman O'Brien, and Jeffrey the Defender Tavares. And of course, I'm yours truly, the rebel with a cause. We were just just talking about a whole bunch of stuff regarding, what the government is doing regarding statutes that they claim will be tabled, and we haven't seen anything. We're talking about housing. We're talking about freedom of speech. We're talking about a whole bunch of things that are so critical and significant to the ordinary, particularly to Jamaicans, but particularly to the ordinary Jamaicans. And a lot of them, they don't have the time to even stop and study these issues because they're so busy with their lives. The majority of whom they're just earning hand to mouth. 66, was it $6,000 per week, right?
No, 9,000.
I'm sorry, 9,000. Yeah, I'm shortchanging them. 9,000. Let me, 9,000 Jamaican dollars per week, which comes out to about $60 per week, which is about $12 a day. Then we have another 11% earning below $5.50 a day. They call that the poverty line. So people are.
The point must be made, Mr. Rattigan, that it's 60% of the working population earning that 9,000 minimum wage, which is very, very disheartening, to say the least.
All right. Well, Rosalie, we thank you so much, and I know you have to go, and we have another guest coming on. We're not gonna. Actually, she was supposed to be on, but I told her this is going great, so she says, "Fine, no problem. We'll continue with you." I know this is your first time here on Reason with Rattigan, but I know it won't be the last. I'm not even hoping. I know it won't be the last because we have so many things in common that we have to share with the Jamaican people. So what I'll do at this point is I'll just have another go at questions again, starting with Conrad. Conrad, go ahead. Do you have another question for Rosalie?
Oh, yes, I have another question for Rosalie. Rosalie, the whole business of national security and corruption are two things that loom large on the Jamaican landscape.
We're still having a problem with your mic. Rosalie, can you mute your mic to see if we... All right, go ahead, Conrad.
At the beginning of last year, no less a person than the Deputy Commissioner, Fitz Bailey, said that there was a number of cold cases that they were going to activate. Suffice it to say that we have seen none of that. We continue to see the acting permanent secretary out of the Ministry of Education on leave, and I think now there are about 3 persons who are now being paid for the same position. Would it be unfair, or would I be remiss to ask, is this a part of some of the things that your advocacy network will be looking at so that we can get these cold cases to some conclusion? Because it is true that people are being fingered in corruption. And when we don't get closure on these cases, then certainly it also impugns the character of these people who the corruption continue to be a halo over their head. So is this something that the advocacy network will be pushing so we get closure on a number of these cases in 2023?
Rosalie, unmute your mic, please.
Yes, I'm trying to, okay. Yes, absolutely. Again, when we look at the list that we had highlighted, you will see on that list the matter of what is happening with respect to the boards. We're very, very concerned because, we had upgraded, and I think regulations were put in place with respect to the Public Bodies and Accountability Act. And so there are still lingering questions. Are those regulations now being used to determine which of the boards are in compliance? And the question of the extent to which, these boards are reined in, because a lot of the problems are taking place through these public bodies. And, you mentioned a few of them. All of these issues are issues that when you look granularly at them, you see that people need to be held accountable. And if it's not the board that's part of a particular government agency, then we have now to look to the ministers. And we saw, for example, what happened last year with respect to the Firearms Licensing Authority. And that we saw that the minister stepped down in the face of the issues that came out there. But there are a whole slew of them. And the list is so long that any one you pick, we may or may not get to, because every year the Auditor General's report writes these, gives us all the details with respect to, where the problems may lie. And the Integrity Commission also puts their report together and so on. And what we have to do is to be guided by them. They have the resources, they can do the thorough investigation. I think what is missing is not just the voice of organizations like ours, but more of them, but also just Jamaicans who, whether they use social media, whether they write letters, whether they call meetings for their MPs and say, hey, you need to do more. Where is your voice on this issue? So we absolutely will continue to push. We not ease up.
See him so. Jeffrey, we're pressed for time. Do you have? We're pressed for time. Jeffrey, you have a question for Rosalia?
Yes, Miss Hamilton, just a yes or a no. I know that we're not in the court of law. Do you believe that the Minister of National Security and the Commissioner of Police should tender their resignation with immediate effect?
Oh boy, that's a hot one. Let me say this. My view with respect to law enforcement, I have a healthy respect for the difficult job both the minister and the commissioner has. This is not a simple problem to fix. We sit on top of the world as the most murderous country. I do not presume to have half of the information they have or to understand enough of the issue to determine whether they should or should not go. However, I will say this. The facts speak for themselves. Jamaica's crime rate, certainly murder rate, has not gone down another year. Jamaicans continue to live in fear. The crimes seem to be getting even more gruesome. And I want to suggest that things must change. We've advocated for a kind of all of society approach that may include moving the minister or changing the commissioner of police, but that in and of itself is not enough. We have to come with a very comprehensive approach that includes all of us as citizens. We have to take some responsibility for the violence we perpetuate in our homes and the kinds of schools and families and churches that we run, right? And I think it's when we come together that solution may fit to give us the kind of comprehensive approach that we want.
I know you're pressed for time, Mr.
Yes,
Rattigan.
what, how long will the question be?
Hold
on, Conrad. Go ahead,
1 minute.
Go ahead.
Just 1 minute. Ms. Hamilton, do you believe that the government of Jamaica should approach the diaspora for help?
Absolutely. The government needs to support, to approach everybody and anywhere we can get help. We need help. And certainly the diaspora has the capacity to provide the kinds of assistance Jamaica needs. Absolutely.
Well, let me just say this, Rosalia, that we're going to have to end it there for today. But I can just tell you what, people are writing me like it's going out of style. And they're telling me, this is stuff like, I would listen to Rosalie all day. Somebody else said, I believe she unpack issues that are fact-based. Them love you like cook food. So we're going to have you back. We're going to have you come back. You know what I mean? You're not getting away from us. And we now ease up. So
Make it 30 seconds.
Yeah, I can only, go ahead, 30 seconds. You're on the clock.
The journalist in me and the broadcaster in me basically chomping at the bit. I must get this one in, Professor. And I'm ending as I started. We, government or society, always have to operate with some amount of regulation, because if you leave it just to the market, certainly things will go awry. We saw a bill that was put on the table by MP Fitz Jackson for a minimum standard in the banking industry, so that our people would not be, down the garden path, so to speak. That was basically thrown out through the window. We also saw a report in the paper recently with Dr. Christopher Casson, association with a
Conrad, wind
company
it up now.
where
Ask the question.
rights
Ask the
were
question. Ask the
supported in
question.
Jamaica. Do you have anything to say on those things? And do you believe that that should basically put some block, some question mark beside the minister's name?
Well, let me just say, we don't have the time. This is definitely an issue that we need a fulsome discussion. I've written an article, in fact. Just Google my name, bank fees, and you will see my views on that. But I want to say in a nutshell that the banking fees are onerous. Jamaicans are feeling the burden. It's part of this high cost of living. We hope that things will change.
All right. And with that, we're going to have to call it a close for this segment with Rosalie. Rosalie,
Thank you so much.
I just want to thank you on behalf of Reggae Global Radio and my and Jeffrey and Conrad for being here with us today and sharing your views with the Jamaican public. We look forward to having you again real soon, like next week. But yeah, we'll talk over the course of the next few days about that, because then I think what will happen is that we'll have you on and then we'll just have to go through the full program with you instead of having other guests join us. So this is a good start. And again, we're going to partner with I consider us partners with Advocates Network, and in that vein, they'll be seeing lots of you on this program. So we look forward to seeing you soon. All right.
Absolutely, and other members of the network as well. Have lots to say.
All right.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care now. Be well.
Good.
All right.
Good. Keep up the good work. Good.
Okay.
Let's we will talk.
All right. People.
Yes,
family.
call me, Conrad.
I will call you. I'll call you. No
Okay.
problem.
Yeah. Family. Before we bring on the distinguished attorney, Shernette Noise, what I'd just like to share something with you. My people, our people. Okay. Here we are. Beautiful couple, eh? Hold on 1 second. Let me see. I don't see the other two. I don't see Kevin and I don't see Fireman and Fireman and the Defender. Okay, let me just cut over here. All right, family, poor people, ladies and gentlemen, listen. It is my distinguished pleasure to introduce to you two people I consider to be experts. They're not only friends, well, they're more than friends, they're family, but they're experts in the field of immigration. We have with us Juan Hiron Sanchez, and of course, I've mentioned her name before, Shernette Noise. They're partners in the firm Noise and Associates, but they're also partners in real life because they're actually married. Congratulations again, they recently got married. And one, I'm trying to tell them I have the thing for you, so. Anyway, folks, what we're going to do today is that we're going to discuss an immigration matter that has come up on several occasions in my practice and in their practice. And it has to do with something called VAWA, Violence Against Women's Act. It's more than just the title, because men can also qualify under this act, even though it says women in the title. And it's a very intensive process. There are things that you have to do. There are things that you must do. And there are also several challenges along the way. So what I'd like to do at this point is to introduce them and have them just go through it, and then they will dictate the course of the conversation. And if you have any questions you want to ask them during the presentation or during the discussion, You can reach out to me at 667-369-8569. That's 667-369-8569. Or you can hit me up in the chat room. Without further ado, Shernet, Juan, the floor is yours. Talk to us about VAWA.
Thank you so much for inviting us today and for bringing up, to the conversations such an important topic about domestic violence. It is particularly important because during COVID, we have seen how the indices of domestic violence have spiked because of financial stressors, but also when it comes to immigration, because a U.S. citizen or a green card holder wants to take advantage of that person who's undocumented.
Well, as it's my pleasure for being here. Always hearing all the good stuff that's going on, and immigration is something we do, and it's a part of us. Our firm is a firm of immigrants for immigrants, because I'm a Jamaican, my husband is from the Dominican Republic, so we're all immigrants. And VAWA is one of the topics that we love to deal with a lot, because as you said, it's not just about women, it's dealing with men as well, because domestic violence is like a pattern of abusive behavior. It could be physical. Most people in here, when you said abuse, they think of physical abuse. It's not only just physical abuse. You have emotional abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse. Because if your partner wants to have sex and you don't want to, and he's forcing you or she's forcing you, that's an abuse. Or financial, technology, they're watching what you're doing, controlling your moves. Those are forms of abuse. And abuse doesn't care about your gender, age, economic status, nor race, nor religion. Not even sexual orientation. So when Mr. Rattigan asked us to come on, he told us to talk about deportation and how it deports you and how you can come back into the US and the different things about violence. I kind of like more of a question and answer type of situation, because when I have the questions, you ask me, I can make it more interactive. I just don't want to give a presentation. I kind of want to be more interactive.
Well, let me start out with a question then to both of you. Does VAWA apply? Like, let's say, for example, there's this couple in America. She's here, let's say, in an undocumented fashion. They get married, and then he promises to file for her, but he doesn't. And then he has her cooking, cleaning, basically like a maid in the house. And every time she says, hey, when you're going to file, he says, well, if you don't do this and if you don't do that, then I'm not going to file, whatever. Would that qualify under VAWA?
Well, first and foremost, let's just say that all discussions there's no legal advice. This is all for educational purposes. And if you want to throw assessment.
Duly noted. Disclaimer duly noted.
However, just for in essence of conversation, there is just a pattern of control and abuse where in that type of scenario that you just painted, that person would qualify for VAWA. Again, most of what we see here is either a U.S. citizen or a green card holder who has to be married to a spouse. Now, if they are unmarried, that would qualify under another type of immigration benefit, which is called U visa for domestic violence, and we can maybe talk about that during another time. So this only applies for those individuals who are married, again, to a U.S. citizen or a green card holder. So we see these types of emotional and psychological abuse, like name calling, intimidating the victim, telling them they're gonna take their kids away, or that if they're gonna call the cops on them, or even lying in the sense of saying, hey, I am in this country, I'm the legal one. If the police come, they're going to arrest you, not me, because I have status. So I have more rights than you do. So these patterns of intimidation, of abuse create a pattern in which that victim doesn't feel like they can leave. And we're particularly interested in creating awareness, particularly when it comes to men and the abuse of men. A majority of the VAWA cases do involve women, But with men, definitely a stigma about being abused, about speaking out of being abused, especially when the uh, perpetrator is going to have some kind of retribution, and they're worried that no one's going to believe them. And again, culturally, for a man to say that they're being abused is just like a big no-no. So we have to definitely, as a community, raise awareness. Again, violence does not discriminate based on gender. It can affect anyone in our community.
If can someone in Jamaica, a spouse who lives in Jamaica, file under VAWA, or is it just somebody who's living in the U.S., a spouse who's being abused living in the U.S.?
Actually, no. So if the spouse living in Jamaica and the other spouse is a U.S. citizen or green card holder, and they go and they spend 6 months in Jamaica with that spouse, so they're living with the spouse for 6 months at a time, and the abuse happened while they were in that 6 months living, then you can take that period of abuse and apply for VAWA. So it would just have to show that there is abuse. It doesn't say abuse has to be for 20 years or any amount. It's just showing that there was abuse that happened while you were married to this individual, make you qualified.
Hold on one second. I'm getting a call here. Let me see. Yes, caller, go ahead. Hello? 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 I'll continue. The caller just.
So, may I, Mr. Rattigan?
Yes, please.
Question for you. So you're saying that if the person is living in Jamaica and the spouse is living in America, and the spouse in America goes down to Jamaica and some abuse happened down there, I'm trying to figure it out. Can you explain more to me, because I'm a bit lost in that part?
Yes. So the spouse lives here in America, but they go home every 6 months. And they're living together in the 6 months while he's in Jamaica. He's abusing the person, whether it may be physical, emotional, whatever type of, as long as you can prove those abuse. Then you can show that that period of time the abuse happened, he was in Jamaica. Then you can qualify for that, because the statute is saying that if you were subjected to abuse, it didn't say exactly it has to be in the U.S. It's just saying if you are subject to abuse by a U.S. citizen or a green card holder. So sometimes some U.S. citizens travel outside of the country for work, and their spouse is living with them outside of the country for work, and that abuse is happening.
So does this apply to a person who is living in the United States but do not have a green card or whatever, and they're working with some people, and the people are abusing them? Can that work also?
Not under VAWA. That would be under what you would call a T visa, which would be a trafficking visa. That's a different category than the VAWA. So under trafficking, it would be more of a labor trafficking. So that would be a different category of visa that they can apply for. And as long as you can show the abuse in that section and report it and have the Department of Labor for that state or wherever the person's working investigate, they can help us with that petition. So it's kind of like a different section.
That's another show. I definitely,
okay.
It's really good to have that show in the sense of.
I would love to have you on my program to explain more about this one of these years, Mr. Rattigan.
No problem.
Absolutely. Wage theft is one of the biggest issues that immigrants face across any nationality. People take advantage of them. They don't pay them overtime. They do not pay them during holidays off. And when that person wants to claim their rights, they pretty much just say, "Hey, I'm going to call the IRS on you, or I'm just going to call the cops and have you arrested and deported," as a way of shutting them down. Immigrants lose millions, if not billions of dollars each year to wage theft. So it's definitely a conversation worth having in the future.
All right.
So tell before you go, if the person threaten you with calling the police and so forth, what can you do?
I would tell them, go ahead, call the cops, because you can also make your report and have them investigate. Because remember, it's illegal to hire undocumented workers. Because remember, immigration tells you you have to file the I-9 for every employee. You have to make sure that they have the proper documents to work in the country. And if you're hiring people who you know don't have it, you're also doing something that can get you in trouble as well.
Mm.
Call
So
it.
when the person is, so the police locked up the person,
Mhm.
are the person gonna be deported back home?
Not immediately, and not depends. It depends on the state, because not every state reports their lockup to ICE. Some state have that reporting where they was automatically send information to ICE, and then you have some state or in some city and state where there are sanctuary cities.
Let me one quick one. Hold on one second. Let me just make an
Okay.
announcement here. I'm hearing that the YouTube show is jammed up. People cannot get on, and so I'm asking listeners to switch to Reggae Global Radio, the radio link, because they apparently there are too many people trying to get on to the YouTube channel right now. So again, if you're having problems getting onto the YouTube channel, just please go to the radio link. Conrad, your question, sir.
All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. How are you guys doing?
Good afternoon. We're doing good. How are you doing?
Great. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure speaking with you. I have a feature that is called Legally Speaking here in Jamaica, and indeed on my program, and indeed we actually recognize that in terms of marriage and so on, relationship, it's one of the frequent topics that basically, always want legal ventilations so people can be more clear. Now, that said, let's say there's abuse taking place in a relationship. The filing was in the process, but what is happening in the relationship is irretrievable breakdown. So the person now who was doing the filing say, listen, I am going to divorce you. Can that person, what recourse would that person have during the middle of that divorce filing? And if I may take you out of the box a little bit.
No, hold on. Let him answer that question, Conrad, then we'll come back to the second question. Go ahead.
All right.
Okay, so I have a question back before I answer. So is the person you're saying is filing for another spouse, but they're in the middle of the petition, and then if the spouse want to take back out the petition, cancel the petition?
Yes, so based on the situation with the marriage breakdown, so what happened, the spouse now say, listen, I am going to divorce you. So what recourse would be there? Because obviously if somebody say I'm divorcing you, then they would basically want to shut down that petition that they're going through, that filing that they're doing. What recourse would that individual have?
Well, thank you for the question. I think it's really important to start with anything legal, right? So it depends, right? So we can speak about one scenario, right? If the person's in the U.S., there is a recourse, right? Which is removal of conditions with a waiver, right? Or again, VAWA, if that person has been battered. Now, if they're doing consular process, the petitioner, the U.S. citizen green card holder is here in the U.S., and the immigrant is abroad, so they're in Jamaica, waiting for the process to go through, waiting for the embassy appointment to go through, then definitely a VAWA would be applicable in that situation. That's one of the most often types of abuse that we see actually is withdrawals of the immigration application, or in some essence, even in some cases, the threatening to divorce, even threatening to keep children away from parents is another form of abuse that we've seen in that scenario, in that situation.
So therefore, you're saying that if that, because I don't know if I get the exact clarity that I'm seeking. If the filing was taking place, that's the term we use. The filing is taking place, and again, the relationship breakdown. The both persons are in the United States. They're actually living together. They're actually living together in the States. But the person said, boy, listen, I don't like how this is happening. So they have a nuance there, the relationship breakdown, irretrievable, and they decide to divorce. What would it's in midterm.
Mhm.
The filing is in midterm. What recourse would that person have?
So, okay, so it's in mid-course, and so if that person canceled the petition, then the immigrant who doesn't have any paper, if he or she were suffering some form of abuse, again, physical, sexual, financial, whether the U.S. resident or citizen person spouse was controlling how they spend their money, or they were controlling who they talk to, were they controlling where they go. If those things happen during the marriage, then that person, even if they get a divorce, can file a VAWA. They'll just have to seek an attorney to explore their other options. Don't have to just, okay, everything done for me now because my spouse is divorcing me and taking away the paper. If you got divorced with VAWA, one of the good thing about VAWA is that you have 2 years after the divorce to file a VAWA petition. So even if they get divorced, and if he or she goes see a lawyer and they meet the qualification for a VAWA, that lawyer, if they know anything about VAWA, can file a petition within the 2 years, even to the day when the 2 years is going to be expired. As long as the petition is filed within 2 years, they're still good.
And that is, again, whether the petition, someone drew the petition and canceled the petition, or is still pending.
And that somewhat times can be considered part of an abuse, because that emotional abuse, because you're using my immigration status against me to control, as a control.
Good. So it's not a situation where that person has no recourse and say, Lord, put their hand up in the ear and say, Lord, me done for.
No, it's not.
Your wife understand that term that I just used, sir.
He does.
No, listen. I'm halfway Jamaican. And I'm happy that you say that, because I'm actually happy that you're bringing that up, because the tolerance that people who are dependent on immigration is just so great. People put up with so much abuse, so much crap, because they are hoping and praying that the immigration process goes through, and they'll put up with, again, the physical abuse, the emotional abuse, the verbal abuse, psychological abuse, threats, the isolation. Some people the petitioner, the abuser, will isolate you from your family, doesn't want you to call anyone, doesn't want you to hang out with your friends, doesn't want you to send money back home, even if it is for your kids. And again, the constant threats, the manipulation, just hiding and even destroying, your passport, your social security card, just whatever they can do as a pattern, again, to maintain that putting you at risk of deportation, and just constant disrespect. And people tolerate that because they don't know about their rights, and they need to educate themselves about the options that are available for them.
Let me ask you this question, Juan and Shirley. This is a question that comes up. It's a scenario that comes up quite often in my practice, and I'm sure in your practice as well. You have a B1, B2 visa holder, tourist visa holder. The person, they come to America, they overstay. No, let me go back. When they apply for the visa, they on the form they put that they're married, right? It's a common law marriage. And so they come to America, and then they get married to someone here, a real marriage, and that person says, okay, I'm going to file for you, or the person files, and then the person starts to abuse them. And threatens that I'm not going to go through with the process. Given the fact that there is a common law marriage existing in Jamaica, does that person qualify for VAWA in America under the immigration code?
Okay, that's a good question, because I do see that a lot, where some people go for a visa and they say they're in common law marriage, but they don't really, sometimes they don't understand what really common law marriage, that it's really a legal marriage, and it's recognized, because it's recognized in Jamaica, it's going to be recognized here in the U.S. as a valid marriage. So you kind of have to go back the steps and see, did you get a common law divorce?
Okay.
So what is a common law divorce?
It's more so you still got to go through the court system to divide properties if you purchase property together. So common law I'm trying to remember how Jamaica do it, because most states in the U.S. doesn't deal with common law marriage, but I know Jamaica do recognize it, and because Jamaica recognize it, the U.S. will recognize it, because wherever the marriage is taking place and is valid is going to be recognized in the U.S. as valid.
If
But-
if I may, just to shed a bit of light on that, in Jamaica, our common law situation that would basically entitle the spouse to have any claim and assets. That person would have to be in the relationship for a minimum of 5 years, and they would have equal status as if it was a legal marriage.
Yes.
That's the situation here in Jamaica.
Well, let me throw something else in the mix here. There is a document, and I'm sure you've seen this one on the internet. There's a document that you can get in Jamaica, even though they put on the form that they have a common law marriage, because they have to have ties back home in order to get that visa, because otherwise you're not going to get it. So you have to show that, well, I have a husband and I'm leaving behind, but I'm not really leaving him behind. I'm going on a vacation and I'm returning. But there is a document now that you can get. The name escapes me now, but basically says that as far as the government is concerned, they have no record of this marriage taking place. How does that factor into someone filing for a VAWA under the abuse that they suffer in the U.S. with this particular document? How does that help them? And how do we go about getting that document?
It does help them, because if there's nothing recorded in the courts in Jamaica or at the National Registry in Jamaica of a marriage, whether common law or civil, then it shows that there's no legal marriage. But at the same time, they have to explain what their understanding of common law marriage when they make that statement. Because when they're making that statement, they're telling immigration everything we put on this paper is true, and that they sworn an oath to what they're testifying to. So then now they have to explain what was their understanding of common law marriage when they did it at the time. Because sometimes people, in Jamaica say, I'm a wife for that, or I'm a husband that, but they just been together for like 2 months. And they hold themselves like that but then they go on to 5 years, as Mr. Conrad said. In Jamaica, after 5 years, it's valid as a common law marriage.
Indeed, once it's 5 years and beyond. As a matter of fact, as I said before, even the same rights that the wife would have, a legal marriage would have, it was called the Married Woman Property Act before, but since then there has been some amendment. I forgot the name that is now called, but it's the same legislation that morphed into this now, which was the Married Woman's Property Act prior.
Yeah, and that document that you're talking about, Mr. Rattigan, is called a non-impediment.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yes. Let me throw out another scenario to you. In the Islamic faith, you really don't need a civil divorce. All you need is just 2 witnesses, and you just say, talak, 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 and the marriage is over. Now, I'm familiar with a case where a woman got married once overseas in the Middle East. She got one of those civil divorces. Then she had a second marriage. Then she traveled to the United States. And when she traveled to the United States, she went to a mosque because the marriage was irretrievably broken. She went to a mosque and she had one of those religious divorces. Then she got married to a third person, and the third person abused her, and she filed for a VAWA. Immigration came back and said, as far as we're concerned, you're still married to the second guy, because in our state, you have to get a divorce in a court. And it's no good that you go to a mosque and an imam will tell you that, he'll be there as a witness to witness the whole thing. And he said, okay, fine. And he'll give you a certificate saying that you're divorced. That's not good enough. How do you go about dealing with something like that, where the person thought they were divorced, and religiously she was divorced, but civilly she wasn't divorced?
Because immigration is going to go by the state that you are in. So if it was done back in her home country, in the mosque, and that was the rules that was recognized there, then that would be valid. But because she's in the U.S. and the states has a procedure of how you have to get a divorce. So going to the religious, even though you have a religious version, how you can do it, it doesn't meet that state's requirement. So it won't be valid here. If it was meet the requirement, if she had done it, go back, say, flew back to her country and said, I want to do that, get my divorce through the church way, and it's going to be valid there because I got the documents from there, then they will accept it.
So that would come on the jurisdiction now as to what obtained in our particular jurisdiction.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to ask another question, Mr.
Before you ask that
Rattigan,
question, Conrad, let me just make a quick comment. No, let me just make a quick. Hold
If
on.
I could just
Let
make
me
a-
just come on. Let me just make a quick comment here. Somebody just wrote me, and it's kind of funny. A dear friend of mine and said, "Could have saved a lot of money being Muslim." Now you tell me. Sorry, Doc.
It's
I should have
important
told you.
in
I'm
terms-
sorry.
It's
All right,
important
go
in
ahead,
terms
Connor.
of VAWA to understand that if you're married to a U.S. citizen and while your application is pending, you cannot remarry. If you remarry, that breaks the chain of command, and then you will no longer be able to apply for VAWA.
Absolute. I know I was asking through your permission and the guest if since we are in this particular topic, if I'm permitted to ask a question, an immigration question, but something a little different.
Sure.
Sure.
Okay.
We'll send you the bill.
They're gonna give me the bill. They're gonna give me the bill.
Well, you know what happened. As we say, it's basically educational. So let's so they won't send me the legal bills. All right, and all right. A lot of our people in Jamaica and maybe the Caribbean by extension, from time to time migrate to the United States through visiting visa. They overstay. Some of them get involved in some level of say drug trafficking, maybe not large traffickers, but nonetheless, they have that on their record. And as a result of that, they stayed away from the process. They don't even get married. They stay away from the process in terms of trying to regulate themselves as green card holder and then further go on to citizens in the United States. Is there any recourse for those thousands or hundreds of people who are living in the United States under that condition and say, boy, I am afraid to basically make that move to try and see if I can get myself regularized?
So that's the thing. It depends, because if you have to evaluate the situation, what got you into making you do that this trafficking. It could have been that you're under duress. The person who tell you to bring the jugs or whatever it is, tell you if you don't do it, I'm going to kill your family.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have been forced to do something. So it may be option again under that trafficking visa. That could be because you're under such duress that you did what you do. You didn't do it of your own free will, but you were forced to do that with that action. So it's kind of like because you did something, you're going to stay away, not trying to seek out advice to see what your option is, and living in that fear of like, if I go and seek advice or try to get myself situated, I'm going to get deported and I'm going to be arrested. You're not sure yet, because when you go to a lawyer, if they evaluate your case and you're going to probably be in more of a danger, I wouldn't think they're going to tell you the advice is to go put yourself in more danger.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to give you the best advice to your situation after they understand everything about your case. You just have to be truthful and honest. Don't hide anything back. Just be completely honest and truthful to that attorney so they can give you a real good advice. Because a lot of times people get misinformation because they hold back certain information. And then when the case go wrong, they blaming the lawyer, but you didn't give the lawyer the full information to evaluate your case.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Let me ask you this. People are wondering about this VAWA business. They're asking, well, what do we need in order to qualify? They've heard that, well, if you're abused and if you're this, but they're talking about like the paperwork. What do we have to produce in order to qualify? And I
But one
believe
of
you
the
had a
things-
list. I believe you guys had a list that you could actually.
One of the main things is to prove that you had a bona fide marriage. So pretty much what that means is that you intended to establish a life together with that person. However, during the period of the relationship, the marriage broke down. So things that may be able to prove your bona fide marriage may be things like if you had children, or if you have a lease with both names together, or you have bills in both person's names, credit cards, utility, internet, cell phone bill, bank accounts. In some other cases, even if you have a will, if you've done any kind of estate planning, if you have that person listed as an emergency contact in your employer or with your doctor or at your kid's school, pretty much how have you been able to blend your life together with this person as you intended to establish a life together? Now, as I said that, one of the main patterns of control and abuse that abusers use is to exactly not allow the person to do that. So let me explain. They'll make sure that they're in control of the finances. So if my wife here goes to work, I'll make sure I take all of her check, or I'll make her deposit it into my account, and I will tell her, hey, you are undocumented, so you can't open anything. Everything has to go through me. And again, that's part of the pattern of abuse and control, which immigration recognizes. So even though if you have little to no evidence, you're still able to make a case. A lot of what your case is based on is your statement, your personal statement of your experience, as well as those in your community who are able to attest and provide statements supporting, the situation of, how the story unfolded and then how things went downhill. It's very important to show that the person prior to meeting the spouse was living, a happy life, right? In the sense of the relationship led to abuse, which has affected my ability to function. So before my marriage, I was fine. Now that I'm married, I am just suffering all of this abuse and I'm traumatized. And my ability to function is directly related to this abusive marriage.
Okay.
And one of the things that we also try to help our client to get is a psychological evaluation, where a psychotherapist gives them a test and then diagnose them based upon their answers to those tests and write their evaluation upon this person, saying this person suffering from major depressive disorder or anxiety, PTSD, and different things. And with the thing with vow is you can be married for just 2 weeks, and because the husband or wife ripped up the marriage certificate and threw it in the garbage, it's kind of a way of control, saying that or your text messages, if they send you text messages that are insulting, it's like we have, like our office, like you said, we create this chart. So we have a chart of like the simplest things of what we'll constitute as a VAWA, what we'll consider abuse in each different ways, like the sexual abuse and psychological abuse, financial abuse, so that people can understand it from a layperson perspective. Because when they hear the legal terms, they like, I don't understand that. Because a lot of times, if you said to somebody, have you been abused? They're going to say no. Because no, he never hit me. No, she never hit me. No. And then when you break down physical abuse and say like, it's really simple. Did this person throw something at you? Or did they pull your hair? Or that's a form of abuse. It may not give you a black eye, but they pulled they're pulling you, or that's that consider physical.
Not running the fingers through the hair.
Running the fingers through the hair, but just really pulling your hair. And it's an abuse. And the thing about VAWA does not just only apply to just the spouse,
right?
Your children. So say you're a U.S. citizen or a green card holder were abusive to your children. Your children can file a petition on their own.
Regardless of their age?
Regardless of if they were under the age. So say they were under the age of 18 before the marriage happened. So anytime the marriage happened, the child has to be under 18 to be considered
under
child.
21.
No.
Sorry.
18 to be considered the child of the U.S. citizen or green card holder, to become the stepchild of that person. Mm-hmm. But say the abuse happened when the person was 18 or 20, before 21 or 21, then they can file a petition on their own. Or abuse of power as well goes to if you're a parent of a U.S. citizen child who is 21 or older, and that child abused you, the parent. You, the parent, can file a VAWA on your own. So it just
And
not only.
just as a segue, and this is something that we also is a very underrepresented part of the population, is those immigrants who come to this country and have children, and they're abused by their own kids. And I know that, our upbringing, you may say, wait a minute, what? That would never happen back home. A child would never, go like that. But here it happens, and it goes to the point where even the kids threaten their parents. If you don't get me that new iPhone, I'm going to call immigration, or I'm going to call the cops, or, you need to pay my bill. So we see it not only in spousal or traditional relationship, but also just within the family. Again, children abusing their parents.
That can never happen in Jamaica.
Well, it depends on where in Jamaica. Yeah.
Depends. Hey, you talking about the old Jamaica? Because the
I
new
guess more
Jamaica.
Absolutely.
The traditional values, kids respected their parents. They will never raise their voice. They will never get physical and so forth. So, but we see that obviously, norms have changed. So you can definitely benefit from this immigration benefit if that has happened to you.
All right.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to. Go ahead, Conrad. Before you ask the question.
If you have the time, if you're not break, could you just explain to our listeners the various method or various means by which one can get can become a green card holder in the state outside of marriage?
Oh, that's a big subject, man. Yeah, that's several programs. But you wanna. Well, talk about the most important or the easiest way to do it. Shernit and Juan.
The easiest one is fiance. If you are abroad.
Still talking about marriage.
Or marriage.
So
Okay.
yeah, he said outside of marriage. So then more so like a family petition. If your parents, say your mom or dad is a green card holder and you're under 21 or over 21 unmarried, they can petition for you. If your child is a U.S. citizen, they can petition for you if they're over 21 and over. If your brother or sister is a U.S. citizen, they can petition for you. It's going to take a long time, but they can petition for you, and they can petition for their children that are married and that are over 21. So it all depends on what your family member is, immigration status is. Another way is through employment. If you can get an employer in the U.S. who will do the labor certs and all the different things that you need to do, and they can petition for you for a green card and bring you to the U.S. with a green card. So it's a very broad topic, and there's different subsections to that one topic.
Right.
And child or children in this case means stepchildren as well.
Excuse me?
Child or children in this case means stepchild or stepchildren.
Yes, as long as their step relationship came into effect before that child turned 18. Yes, and also adopted.
All right. Nothing like having a tech guru at your side, because I tell you, I would be lost without Kevin. Kevin, thank God for you, man. If I hit the lottery, although I'm not supposed to play the lottery, but if I come into some money, rest assured, you will be fine, my brother. You
really
have nothing
no.
to worry about for the rest of your life. So
You just boss.
yes, as I was saying,
The lottery is at 1 billion, you know.
Nobody he just gave away himself and announced to the world that he has X amount of tickets. Because he said when he win.
well,
Not only that.
wouldn't it be fun? Wouldn't it be
not
something
only
else,
that,
right? If
not
I have the
only
winning
that.
ticket, right? You would be smiling as well.
Not only that, as an attorney Will Rattigan knows that he just made a contract.
There you go. There you go.
but
There you
but as
go.
an attorney, I know that I can rescind the contract.
Well, it depends on whether or not you've already received consideration for what you
Well,
offer.
that's true. That's true. I haven't received any consideration yet. You know, the offer, the acceptance, no consideration. But anyway, getting back to business. The Minister Johnson Smith, she went to Morocco in 2019, and I found that kind of strange. And they were, you know, and I read the Moroccan news, and it said that she was there to develop relations with Morocco, and they were talking about training, tourism, sustainable development, agriculture, and renewable energy. That's 2019. Fast forward, 2022. And I have all the documents here, but I just don't have enough time to go through them because I want to save enough time for Ambassador Ward to explain to us, give us the historical perspective in the UN, what actually happened. But in 2022, in March, I believe, of 2022, Jamaica received 2.6 million pounds of high-grade fertilizer from Morocco. And so it piqued my interest because I'm trying to think, why would Morocco give Jamaica 2.6 million pounds of high-grade fertilizer? For what? Then the second part of this story is that the fertilizer was to the government of Jamaica to be distributed to the farmers for free. I've spoken to several farmers, and I've only come across one person, well, actually two people, who knew about the fertilizer. One person went to RADA, the Rural Agricultural Development, I think, agency, and they told her she didn't qualify. So that was that. At the same time, now keep in mind, people, there's a war going on in the Ukraine, and the Ukraine is one of the world's biggest producers of fertilizer. So because of the war, fertilizer prices went sky high. There's a company in Jamaica called Ferguson Newport East. And it just so happens, and I'm just throwing this out for people to think, not making any accusations. But last year, after Jamaica received the 2.6 million pounds of fertilizer, Ferguson dropped or lowered their fertilizer prices 3 times. And what happened after that is, and I have it right here. They were talking about the fertilizer. And they were saying that there is a global shortage of fertilizer, and that the price, or the prices, because you have different types of fertilizer, prices were sky high. So I started thinking, well, wait a minute. You have the minister going to Morocco in 2019. Then you have the fertilizer coming in 2022 in March. Then you have Ferguson dropping prices after March. I think they dropped it in May, June, and November. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. Where did the fertilizer go, and why did Ferguson drop its prices? Those questions are still unanswered. But just keep those in mind, folks, as Ambassador Ward is going to reveal to us why and how did Jamaica get that gift in the first place. Ambassador Ward, the floor is yours, sir, and welcome.
Thank you very much for welcoming me to your program with all these other illustrious gentlemen who am sitting here in trepidation of your questions. Now, where should we begin on this? I think we should begin with a little bit of history about Jamaica's foreign policy. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear, sir.
Okay.
Conrad, readjust your camera, or flip it. All right, go ahead, Ambassador Ward.
Yes, I think we got a bit of background on Jamaica's relationship with Morocco and the whole issue of Western Sahara. Because the foreign minister's trip to Morocco is tied to Jamaica's policy on Western Sahara. For those of your listeners who are not familiar, Western Sahara was a protectorate of Spain since 1984. And in 1963 was declared by the UN General Assembly as a non-self-governing territory, putting Western Sahara in a category of territories that should be seeking and receiving independence based on the wishes of the people of non-self-governing states. Morocco, well, there was an agreement in 1975 called the Declaration of Principles on Western Sahara, which was done in Madrid, Spain, between Spain, Morocco, and Mauritania for the future administration, temporary administration, and I emphasize temporary. This was from 75. At one point, Spain decided to pull out of the agreement and to leave Western Sahara. Mauritania and Morocco made claims over Western Sahara territory. The people of Western Sahara rebelled. The group, which is well known as Polisario, which is the political as well as the military arm of the Sahrawi people in Western Sahara, began a war of liberation. They received backing from Algeria. Since that time, Mauritania withdrew. But since 1976, the Jamaican government has recognized the right to self-determination of the Sahrawi people of Western Sahara and has defended that right, that core principle of Jamaica's foreign policy, which we hold sacrosanct as a former colonial country, the right to self-determination of the people. Fast forward, we were on the UN Security Council in 2000, 2001. At that point, Western Sahara was on the top of our agenda, among other conflicts on the African continent. Jamaica carried the brief for Western Sahara, along with the African representative during those 2 years. And a month or so before our term expired, I drafted a letter to the Legal Council of the UN, the Under Secretary General for Legal Affairs. Jamaica was presiding at the time over the UN Security Council. So I drafted a letter which we sent to the Under Secretary General of Legal Affairs to get a decision on whether there was legality in what Morocco was doing in terms of signing contracts with oil exploration companies to explore for oil on the coast of Western Sahara. Well, the response from the legal office, looking at all the terms of international law, UN resolutions, decision of the International Court of Justice, was that Morocco did not have administrative authority over Western Sahara. And no such authority was ever granted to Morocco. Fast forward, 2016, the Honest government decided to step back on its recognition of Polisario, which is also known as SADR. Began to step back their recognition of that group, meaning they were stepping back on the rights of the Sawari people to self-determination. Then, in 2019, Kamina Johnson-Smith, the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade of Jamaica, visited Morocco. And I have here a report, according to Morocco World News, written on December 12, 2019. It said, Jamaica was a strong supporter, excuse me, of Morocco's claim over Western Sahara. The report stated that Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith announced in a press briefing in Rabat, Morocco on December 11, 2019, that Jamaica firmly supports the UN-led political process to find a solution to the Western Sahara issue. But here is the clincher. After saying that, according to the report, the foreign minister maintained the position Jamaica took in 2016 and reiterated its decision to withdraw its recognition of Southern Polisario, a total abandonment. Now, this to me was really shocking because this was an abandonment of a long-held principle of support of the right of the Sahrawi people to self-determination. What were the reasons behind this abandonment of a policy defended by Jamaica since 1976? Every government, including the government of former Prime Minister Edward Seaga. So this was quite troubling. And the vast majority of countries around the world do not recognize Morocco's claim over Western Sahara. On December 10th, 2020, that would make it about 40 days before Trump left office. He signed a proclamation recognizing the sovereignty of Morocco over Western Sahara as a precondition for Morocco to establish diplomatic relations with Israel. Now, you raise the issue, Mr. Rattigan, about the fertilizer. And I'm asking myself, actually, I'm asking the government of Jamaica. I'm asking Foreign Minister and Minister of Foreign Trade, the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith. Did we sell the recognition of the Sahrawi people right, their inalienable right to self-determination for 1.2 metric tons of fertilizer? But there was also some information which I'm sure the Honest-led government was very well aware. It was a report in 2016 that came out from UNCTAD. It was part of the World Development Report. It revealed that that Morocco in 2015 had invested $600 million in sub-Saharan Africa. So the whole administration would have been familiar with that. The question is, by recognizing Morocco's claim over Western Sahara, was that a quid pro quo for the fertilizer? Or was it part of a process that the Jamaican government has embarked on to attract Morocco's investment in Jamaica? But the other thing is, when the fertilizer arrived in March of 2022, the foreign minister, in speaking to the press, said, Morocco kept faith with Jamaica. Kept faith meaning there was a promise made. Was that a quid pro quo? Promise made, promise kept. So the foreign minister has never explained what she said to the press in Morocco. It has never been reported in Jamaican media. And I fault Jamaican media for that. I raise the issue of Israel because our Prime Minister Andrew Holness, visited Israel in January 2017. And he didn't take the foreign minister with him. He took the Minister of Finance and the representatives from his Economic Development Council, whatever he called it, right? Again, he came back from Israel and he never explained to the Jamaican people what took place in his discussions with Israel. But let me double check my dates here. In December of 2017, following his visit to Israel, when Donald Trump again decided to move the US Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, the majority of UN member states voted to condemn that move as contrary to resolutions of the UN Security Council and the General Assembly and peaceful settlement of the Palestinian issue of a Palestinian state. When the vote came up in the UN, and this is another issue on which Jamaica has been steadfast over all administrations in defending the right of the Palestinian people. The Andrew Holness-led government abstained on the vote in the UN. Normally, votes defending the rights of the Palestinian people would have had Jamaica's vote. This is another abandonment of one of our core principles. But don't take my word for it. I found an article written in the Observer, in the op-ed, an op-ed column written by Ralston Nemad. Ralston Nemad, Dr. Nemad is a priest and a social commentator. Let me just give you a few of the words he wrote. This was on December 27, 2017, following Jamaica's vote on the Palestinian issue. And I quote, he said, any hallmark of good governance is the fidelity to principles that one considered almost sacrosanct. One does not bend these principles to serve another end unless there is compelling reason to do so. He said, to abstain on the use of this magnitude sends a very powerful signal, perhaps even more powerful than if the country had voted yes or no. He said, some will argue this was a cowardly move. He went on to say, perhaps even more, he went on to say, which was not in keeping with Jamaica's long tradition of not recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. The question now is Jamaica abandoning the high moral ground that it has taken on the Jerusalem question? So now we have recognition by one country, the United States, of Morocco's sovereignty over Western Sahara, for Morocco's recognition of, well, engaging in diplomatic relations with Israel. Just recently, the Moroccan government said, up to this point, while they have established some form of diplomatic relationship, they have not decided to put their embassy. They have not opened an embassy. And they will not do so unless Israel recognizes Morocco's sovereignty over Western Sahara. The betting now is odds on that Netanyahu will recognize Morocco's sovereignty. So there's a triangle between Jamaica, Morocco, and Israel.
And the US.
And the US. However, there's lots of pressure on the Biden administration to rescind not the Jerusalem status, but the Morocco's sovereignty over Western Sahara. There is some pressure on where that is concerned. But Jamaica, we talk about transparency in government. Jamaica has never explained the Jerusalem vote or the Western Sahara decision. My question is, and it is a question which is implicit in something else Dr. Nemad said in his article. He said, Jamaicans find Honus's fence-sitting particularly revolting. Jamaica's voice in the international fora has never been muted when it comes to matters on which the nation ought to be heard. He's talking about the abstention. And he said, one should not appear cowardly for the sake of getting along. If the government has a cogent and credible explanation for its actions, it must come out and tell the Jamaican people. If it cannot, then it should apologize for insulting us in this matter. And that goes for both issues. Those are, the latter part were my words. But I use Dr. Namad's words so as not to be accused of trying to bash the foreign minister or the Andronis-led chaotic foreign policy on the global stage.
All right.
We don't want the Minister of Information come at you again.
I would welcome the opportunity, Mr. Tavares.
All right. Let me just say.
But we are not equals.
Let me just say something here,
I
Ambassador.
am not interested.
That there is, as far as I'm concerned, and this is my opinion, there is little wonder why this minister has been described by the Observer, just I think it's this week, as the worst minister in the administration. And
The cabinet.
yeah, and somebody said to me, they said to me, Rattigan, if you did stay in your mother's womb one more day, you would be a prophet. Because I've been calling out these ministers as the worst ministers in the cabinet. Tufton, Kamina Johnson-Smith, Chang, and Favour Williams. And those are the top four, the worst ministers in the administration. Now,
Where is our minister?
Also, they call them politicians.
right. Now, here's the thing. The reason why, and I'm using it to segue a little bit because just a quick segue, because I'm going to come back to Conrad and Jeffrey for them to ask their questions. But the reasons why the Observer dubbed her as the worst minister, and I'm trying to find the section where here it is. It said, among those who were firmly entrenched in the losers column in 2022 are the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Kamina Johnson-Smith, and in parentheses, the biggest loser, right? And then they talk about her failed bid to become the Secretary General of the Commonwealth. But there are other reasons. The reasons you just mentioned, Ambassador, those would be good enough reasons. Then also there is one, the Morocco would be one. There's also the one about the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council, of which she has not provided legal counsel to the members, the people, some of whom she personally has selected, regarding the Foreign Agents Registration Act in the United States. These people are putting themselves in legal jeopardy. They're putting themselves in legal jeopardy by becoming a part of this organization and having regularly scheduled meetings with Jamaican representatives in the United States. There's also the reason of the political appointees, where now you find that a lot of the significant posts or postings, they're headed by political appointees who have no clue about diplomacy, no clue whatsoever about what they're supposed to be doing, but it's considered a political favor. Granted, it's and let me just say, it's a prime minister's prerogative to appoint those people, but she plays a role as well because she's the minister. She's the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. She hasn't done anything. So when I combine all of these reasons, including the one from the Observer and the ones that you just mentioned, I am supremely confident in my judgment that this minister is the worst. I know people say, I even have MPs calling me saying, why you bash her, someone? She's a nice person and whatnot. I said, no, but facts are facts, truth is truth. And the truth must not only be the truth, but the truth must be told. Conrad, tell some truth or ask some truth.
Well, hi, Ambassador Ward. How are you doing, sir? Okay, good. He's muted. All right, good.
Good, I'm doing good.
Good. All right. Before I go into my thing, I just want to pause for 30 seconds just to say condolences to the family, immediate and extended family of Ambassador Richard Burnell, a man who sat at the pinnacle of diplomacy and also as academe out of the West Indies here. He served in a very able manner at the University of the West Indies. And I know that himself and Ambassador Ward would have had great relationship. All right.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I was on an earlier radio program with some other people who knew him well, paying tribute to him earlier today. And indeed, we had a wonderful working relationship. So thank you.
You're most welcome, Ambassador. I just want to say that, to ask a question, looking back at our foreign policy from as far back as we can remember, but let's basically delve into the 70s. We had very, very strong foreign policies, and we were seen as the beacon in this part of the hemisphere, certainly within the Caribbean, as it relates to foreign policies. And it's whatever you want to say, it would be a kind of relationship that would span both administration, whether it's led by the Jamaica Labour, the People's National Party, or by the JLP. Fast forward to the most recent time, what we're seeing, Ambassador, certainly coming across very amateurish. It also borders and look corrupt in some cases. What do you put that to? Is it incompetence or it is just blatant corruption? We heard with Mr. Rattigan's opening, where he said he had asked some question about this fertilizer from Morocco, and there's other things, and you brought into the loop, Ambassador, asking the question, is there a PRID and a co? What is happening here in Jamaica as it relates to our foreign policy? And could you hazard a guess? What is the situation? Is it, as I asked before, just mere incompetence, or it is garnished with corruption?
You know, one of the observations that I have been making in some of the things I've written in the Ward Post is that Jamaica's foreign policy under the Honest government has abandoned core principles and has become what I call a transactional foreign policy. What can I get if I do X? As far as corruption is concerned, I don't know what happens on the sidelines. But in terms of benefit to Jamaica, I'm not seeing any. 1.2 metric tons of fertilizer for abandoning a core principle of our foreign policy, damaging a reputation which was built up over decades, 62 years of independence, going back to when the most Honorable Hugh Shearer was foreign minister and then prime minister, and even before we became independent, even before we were responsible for our own foreign policy.
Norman Manley was very big on that.
Manley took a very serious decision against South African apartheid. And Jamaica became the first country, along with India, to end trade with South Africa. So it is in us as a people, as a former enslaved and colonized people, to recognize the injustices of colonial exploitation. And for us now to be benefiting or seek to be benefiting from colonial exploitation of other people who we should be their voice or among their voices is really a disgrace and has damaged Jamaica's reputation globally. And we wonder why our illustrious foreign minister was rejected by the members of the Commonwealth. They know what's going on in the African countries. Morocco in 1984 left the Organization of African Unity because Polisario was admitted.
Mhm.
It wasn't until, I think it was 2017, that Morocco applied for readmission to what is now the African Unity. Countries like South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, all oppose Morocco's sovereignty over Western Sahara.
Ambassador Ward,
Jamaica, who has been a voice on the global stage all these decades to make a 180-degree turn, is mind-boggling to say the least.
Hold on one
Ambassador
second,
Ward.
Conrad. Hold on one second. Jeffrey, you have a question? Unmute, please. Yeah.
Yeah, the question I want to ask Ambassador Ward is, Jamaica has been a part of the UN for many years. They signed on to the UN Charter for many years now.
1962.
Yes, 1962. 60 years now. If my calculation is correct.
going 61, yeah? Mhm.
Yes. And for us now to drift away from the core principle of what we are as a people and as a country, to stand up for certain things within the world. Isn't that an embarrassment in this country, Ambassador?
You remember what Donald Trump said through his ambassador, Nikki Haley, at the UN? That those countries who don't stand behind the Trump administration in these fora, speaking of the UN and other international fora, that they are watching them. So when Dr. Nemad wrote about cowardly, that's what he was talking about. First of all, our foreign policy is what I call a shambolic foreign policy. It is a day-to-day foreign policy based on a handout. That's not a sovereign country with any pride.
Look, let me just say this, Ambassador, before, because we're running short on time here, that, you know, this foreign minister, right, as well liked as she is amongst her peers, she's an abject failure. When they bamboozled the CARICOM into believing that they would support the Baroness, our Baroness from Dominica,
Scotland.
Scotland, and then suddenly they changed and they put her name up. As a principled person, she should have said no. She should have said, no, we can't do this. But she didn't. She didn't. She went along with it. And then when she realized that she wasn't going to get the support of CARICOM, what did she do? She went on a trip to Africa to convince them to vote for her. And at the same time, she went along with the dollars provided by quote unquote corporate Jamaica to Fin Partners. That's another story. We haven't finished with that story yet. And she went there. They had a public servant. Jamaican people, I open and listen to me. Please, family, open and listen to me, especially the poor people them. Uno taxes them use and pay if you take a civil servant from Europe for fly to Nigeria to take Kamina Johnson's photographs. And then fly him, I name the gender, him, she know who me I talk about, fly him to Ghana to take pictures at the celebration that she went to. And then I'm hearing from good sources that she said she loved how she looking at pictures and him take, even though they had photographers on her trip, right? Then they went to Kigali for the anticipated celebratory event, only to be disappointed. And who went? The Prime Minister's wife went. A big delegation went, including the present ambassador, Jamaican ambassador to the United States, Audrey Marks. There are media reports of her being there. Why, people? Why? Because they take us for granted. They can do whatever they want to do because nobody's looking, nobody's checking, nobody is holding them accountable. And that is wrong. And we have to stand up, people. We have to stand up because if we don't, this is going to continue. And that's why we have this program called Reason with Rattigan. And we have the fireman with his program, and we have Jeffrey Tavares with his program, and we have you, Ambassador, with your program, because we need to speak out, and we need to speak out in a loud voice. Because some of the things that you've mentioned today, I guarantee you that people in Jamaica didn't know this, that there is seemingly a quid pro quo for, you change the support and you get your fertilizer. And then to make it worse, the fertilizer hasn't been properly distributed. I went over it with a gentleman, won't call any names, I never will. And our best estimate is that about £500,000 went out. And we're trying to figure out where did the rest of this fertilizer, where is it? And we know that you can't store it for too long because it loses its potency and it's high grade. So, it's similar to what they did when they took the loans, the 750 million loans from the IMF, IDB, and World Bank. And they set up all kind of schemes, right? Payment schemes. And they know that the poor people in the country, some of them don't have access to a bank account. They don't have access to the internet. They don't. And then that money went back. Where did that money go? And guess what, Jamaican people? You better listen to this carefully. That 750 million US dollars, that's a loan that has to be paid back. And here's the sorrowful part of it. Some of the people who didn't get the money will have to pay back that, will have to help to pay back that loan.
The poorest of the poor.
Will have to pay back that loan. That grieved me. Grieved me. And I wonder how these people sleep at night. How?
And not only that, Mr. Rattigan, the audacity and the arrogancy of a prime minister of this country who will go abroad, talk to who he want to talk to overseas, and come back and don't report to the Jamaican people. He has no regard for the people of Jamaica who put him where he is.
Look, I can talk about the FBI. The FBI, before you go on a trip, you have to justify that trip to your superiors. You have to justify that, okay, this trip is going to be worthwhile in the following manner, and then they will budget it accordingly. When you come back, there's something called an after action report. You have to say what happened. And for the taxpayers to be fronting and paying all of these bills, and they have what benefit do they get out of this? What benefit? Conrad, please.
Ambassador Ward and Mr. Rattigan, Jeffrey, Mr. Tavares, a lot of things we said, but we want to envelope all of what we're saying here based on those things that you just outlined earlier, Ratty. What this means, because I want to bring it down to the most granular level, what this means to the person who is sitting in a chair for 48 hours at the Cornwall Regional Hospital, at KPH, at Mandeville Regional Hospital, all of what you're saying, what does it mean? What role does all of these play with these fancy trips all over the place that's costing millions and all sorts of quid pro quo that we're seeing all over the place? What this mean? Put it in a nutshell for my Jamaican people, Ambassador Ward.
Well, any money spent unnecessarily, and I'm not determining whether monies are spent unnecessary or not. There seems to be quite a bit of circumstantial evidence to believe monies are being spent unnecessarily and unwisely. But any money spent in that way is depriving poor people of benefits that they need. Not what they want, what they need. Basic benefits to improve what I call human security. Food, shelter, clothing, education, health. Why should Jamaica, a poor country, be wasting money like that? When you look at the size of some of these delegations, you have to wonder who's paying for it. And we know The government is paying for it, but the government is not the government money. It's taxpayers' money. It's the people's money. So when you go on a trip, you are accountable to the people. So when you come back, you must tell the people what benefits your trip derived for the country and for them. And while you are away, we are living in an age of information technology. You should be sending out releases while you're abroad. Our media, our press cannot afford to travel with these government officials. But government officials have
sorry,
an
Ambassador.
obligation.
Sorry, Ambassador, the,
Keep them
the
informed.
JIs can travel with them.
You know? well, you know, Jeffrey, they'll be very selective about who they want to travel with them because they don't want to be exposed.
Oh.
Who should the Jamaican people hold accountable for all of this, Ambassador Ward? And are we at a point, what should be done to recalibrate what is happening with our foreign policy, if it can be done at this late stage in the game, under this administration?
Give a
Let
quick
me say
answer.
this.
Give a quick answer, Ambassador, because we're pressed for time.
The government is responsible to the people. Each minister bears responsibility to explain their portfolio
Hello.
and what they are
Yes,
doing
I just want to make a
to the
comment
people.
as a caller.
But the buck stops at the Prime Minister.
Ambassador Ward, hold on. We have a caller. Caller, we don't have much time. Go ahead. Make your statement, please.
Yes, I just want to say from where I stand and I'm listening to what you're saying about our Prime Minister and Mrs. Johnson Smith, it seems as if they're together to overthrow the Jamaican people. Because based on what you're saying, in my opinion, the Prime Minister is working towards being a dictator. And I don't have enough time to continue the conversation, but thank you very much for the information that you're, sending out to the Jamaican people. And I hope they're listening because they're being betrayed.
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you very much.
You.
May I just quickly respond to that caller because
Yes, go ahead.
that caller so on point. I have been writing about the slide into autocracy and slide away from democratic forms of government, not only in Jamaica, but across the Caribbean. And I appreciate that call.
All right. Here's what we're going to do because we're pressed for time. I mean, we could go on for another hour or so, but we only have about 5 minutes. What I'm going to ask Jeffrey is, can you give a closing statement? We don't have time for another question because by the time we go around the loop, it's over. So can you give a closing statement, sir?
This has been a remarkable evening with some information from the beginning to the end with Ambassador Curtis Ward, who's here with us now. And just to let everybody know, I will be on my YouTube channel at 7 p.m. Make We Talk Transport. Is the transport sector in crisis? Is the government of Jamaica forcing bus and taxi operators to take out loans to pay for their tickets when the system is broken? So join me at 7:50 at 7 o'clock this evening, rather. At 7 o'clock this evening on the Make We Talk Jeffrey Tavares YouTube channel.
Okay. Conrad, go ahead, please, sir.
All right, good. So just want to say thank. Yeah, man, I'll be quick. Thanks for you. Thanks, Ambassador Ward. The statement, the information you gave this afternoon have been very, very revealing. We got a flurry of information earlier. I want to say thanks. Let me just use the opportunity quickly just to invite persons to join me on Monday at News Talk 93 FM, where we broadcast live from the University of the West Indies, Mona, for Straight Up with yours truly, Conrad O'Brien, the fireman, at 9 a.m. sharp.
Okay.
So catch you then. Ambassador Ward, we'll talk.
Yeah. Caller, go ahead. We don't have much time.
Yeah, I have a question. It's
Please.
probably not necessarily for this show. Maybe we could discuss it in another show.
Uh-huh.
So, I've been watching you, Mr. Rattigan, for a little bit here, and I see your significant experience that you have with law enforcement and the legal apparatus. What I'm saying to you is, why can't the people of Jamaica put some type of referendum on the ballot? And
we're not hearing the caller, Ratty.
DPP position selected by the corrupt administration down there, maybe the people could vote to have a system where people actually elect that person. Maybe
Well,
it's for a different day.
well, that's a good question, but like you say, it's for a different day. I tell you what, I'm gonna try and see if I can bring that question into the show next week.
Thank you, sir.
So what I'd like you to do is listen next week, tell your friends, even tell your enemies, make up with them, and listen to Reason with Rattigan, and then bring up this question and we'll discuss it next week. All right?
Appreciate it. Thank
All
you.
right, anytime. Ambassador Ward, we have 3 minutes out. One for you, one for me, and one for music. Go ahead, sir.
Unmute your mic, Ambassador. Unmute your mic, Ambassador.
Unmute your mic. Unmute your mic.
Unmute your mic, Ambassador.
I just lost 30 seconds.
Okay.
You had an earlier guest, Professor Hamilton, who is involved with the Advocates Network. And I think all of us have an obligation to support that group because they are one of the very few that are raising serious questions of accountability in the government of Jamaica. But they need support, and I think we should all support them. I write on the Ward Post. I have my podcast, Really Talk with Ambassador Curtis Ward, available, and I have a YouTube channel. So I do what I can to get the word out. But the government must understand that they are accountable to the people, and those of us who live in the diaspora have a vested interest in the welfare and development of Jamaica, and we will not stop.
Thank you so much. As a wise man once said, nothing I can say will improve upon what Ambassador Ward just said. So I want to thank him. I want to thank Conrad O'Brien. I want to thank Jeffrey Tavares and Professor Hamilton and Shernet and Juan. I call him Shernet and Juan because, we're close, for being here this week. Join me next week, same time, same place, when we'll have another riveting program. And we may have some of the same guests that we had today. So again, folks, have a great weekend. Hope you listened and you learned something from this. And we'll be back next week on www.reggaeglobalradio.com. Take care, be well.